Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 170 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I could not be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to be talking about your financial fears and the things that may be holding you back from doing the things that you need to do financially. We're going to talk about what some of those fears may be, how you can go about getting over those specific fears, and why those fears are lying to you, why those fears are irrational and should not hold you back from living the financial life that you've always wanted to live. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, then be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to keep you accountable to a financial plan and create a plan that is specific to you and your family's needs, and that's something you can follow over the long term, then I can do that for you. Just go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab, and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you, and we can begin pushing towards your long-term financial goals together. Now look, I understand that for many of you, money is scary. Money is a scary topic. It's something that you don't want to talk about. It's something that you cringe to even think about in many cases. Money is not fun. Money is not fun to talk about for many of you because there's so much anxiety. There's so much fear that you're going to, one, do something wrong. There is the fear that you've done things wrong in the past and you don't want to repeat your mistakes. There's the fear that other people are going to find out the mistakes that you have actually made. And all of these fears are really unwarranted. There is nothing more powerful than taking over control of your financial life. There's nothing more powerful than actually taking steps to actually get to where you want to be financially. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to take the steps to get to where you want to be financially. And part of that means you have to get over some of the specific financial fears that you have. Those that I just named were some broader fears that you can have around your personal finances. But we're really going to dig in today to specific fears you may have about your finances. Now, we know that anything that is this emotionally connected to us is extremely important. It's important to manage your money well. It is important to have a good financial plan that you follow and that you stay accountable to over the long term. And I'm here every day trying to help you guys walk through that exact path, to try to walk through the path of having a good plan, understanding what to do in different situations, understanding how different situations bear out in your financial life, and giving you the confidence to actually go and do something about it. Because I think that is one of the biggest issues that we have, is that we get so fearful because we don't know. We get so fearful because we just look at things and we're like, I don't even know what to do in this situation. I'm unsure. I have a lot of ambiguity about what is going to happen given a certain set of circumstances. And so we have to make sure that given these circumstances that we can do the right thing financially, that we can make the right choices, and that we can actually act, that we take action. We don't let fear cripple us, because fear will cripple you. Fear will get in the way of you doing the right things financially. It will keep you sitting back in the old habits that you've always been in. And what you don't know is that the fears that you may have about your financial life, the fears that you may have about stepping into a place where you're actually taking control of what you're doing financially, those fears, if those things actually occurred, then the pain of those things occurring would actually be far less than the pain you are currently in financially, given that you are not working a plan, given that you have not taken the step towards saving money or becoming debt-free or investing for your future, whatever it may be, right? Given that you have those fears are keeping you from a place that is better than the place that you are currently in, yet you are comfortable where you are. We all get comfortable with our own crap, right? We get comfortable with the things that we do, and even if they're bad habits, we get comfortable in them, and we are okay with living out our lives in these bad habits. But that's not what I want for you guys, and that's not what you should want for yourself. What you should want for yourself is to live a fulfilled financial life, is to build the financial life that you've always wanted to live and get over some of these fears and start building something that maybe you never thought was possible. So I want to specifically speak to some financial fears that you could have, and especially fears that are specific to the financial action plan that I've laid out for you, and the plan that I think you should work in order to reach long-term financial freedom. And so the first financial fear that a lot of people have is unexpected financial emergencies. And they're afraid that if they do certain things with their money, that they will not have money when something bad happens. And that's very logical, right? That's why I build the financial action plan the way that I do. What is the second part of the financial action plan? It is to build a month's worth of expenses in a small emergency fund. And then the fifth part, after we are out of consumer debt, you're building that emergency fund up to 4 to 6 months worth of expenses. And the reason that we do this is so when unexpected things happen, when true emergencies occur in our lives, that we can take care of those things. And the truth is, most Americans cannot cover a $400 expense if it were to hit today. So if you are afraid of an emergency occurring, then you should probably get in a hurry about fixing your financial life, about cleaning up your financial life and all the issues that you may have surrounding it. Because until you can build up a proper emergency fund, until you can have money set away in savings that we do not touch for anything but emergencies, you're not going to feel good about the fact that unexpected things could occur and could knock you on your tail financially, right? Many people, and this is just a very common fear that people have, are afraid that there are things medically that could occur because medical bills are some of the most expensive and just crazy amounts that people would have to pay off, and they're the most unforeseen, right? Obviously, there are debts like you may have your student loans or your car or your home or whatever it may be. But as far as unforeseen things that may occur, medical bills are some of the biggest, and people are afraid that something medically could occur and it could bankrupt them, or maybe not necessarily bankrupt them, but it could put them where they don't have enough money to cover those situations. And that's why we want to build up those fully funded emergency funds. So if something unforeseen were to occur, you can take care of that unforeseen item and then move along in most cases. Obviously, we are not trying to build emergency funds to where we can cover all of life's possibilities, but we want to play the averages. We want to play the probabilities, and we want to say, hey, this 4 to 6 months of expenses will cover most things that may occur to us financially over the course of our lifetime. And so that financial fear is very real. It should be real. If you don't have one, I bet you feel that a little bit, that the dominoes could fall at any given time as far as emergencies go. But if you build up an emergency fund, you have that money there. You won't go back into debt for these things that may be unforeseen in your life, and you'll be able to continue on in your financial plan. You'll be able to continue on in building financial success and financial freedom over the long term. And so kind of intertwined with that idea of fearing not having money for emergencies, one such emergency that most people fear the most is unemployment. And whenever was that more real and tangible than it is today, and as it has been in the past year or so, when the coronavirus pandemic knocked out a lot of jobs in our economy. And so unemployment has been a very real thing, and many people are afraid to get the pink slip. They live paycheck to paycheck, and they are afraid to lose their job. And understandably, I completely understand. I understand if you're living a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle and you don't have any margin, any extra money to go around, and then you lose the money that you were bringing in. Yes, I'm sure that can be a very debilitating feeling. But the reason that I build the financial action plan in the way that I do, the reason that I put those emergency funds in place for you, and the reason I ask you to build them up for yourself, is because if you were to lose your job, 4 to 6 months worth of expenses for your household should be enough for you to find another job, to find other income that can supplement the money that you have in savings. Yes, if you can't cover a $400 expense like most Americans right now, and you were to have to lose your job and file for unemployment, then I don't even know what that kind of place must feel like. And a lot of people have lived that out over the last year. But if you have an emergency fund in place, if you have the money in place to bridge the gap between that emergency, between that loss of income and actually receiving a new job offer, then you will be in a much better place. So even though this is a true financial fear that most people have, and is a big reason why people don't step out on a limb and try to build something for themselves, even though building something for themselves will maybe be more stable than the current job that they may have. But unemployment is real, and it is something that a lot of people fear, and a lot of people fear economic downturns because historically there are certain industries that like to lay off a lot of workers when things are not so good. And so I understand that. But if you have the emergency funds in place, you can weather the storm. You can get past some of these things. So if unemployment is keeping you from turning your financial life around, if it's keeping you from not living a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, if it's scaring you into not doing anything, then I would tell you that that is completely unwarranted, because you should be building up emergency funds. You should be getting out of debt so that when and if something does occur to your job and you no longer have a place to work, that you can get through things in a fairly unscathed way. And you notice I said getting out of debt because if you are out of debt and you have an emergency fund, that means you have less bills, or you don't owe anyone anything, and you have money to cover your needs. And that's really all you need when you are unemployed. And then you can spend all of the rest of your time trying to find a new job, trying to find a replacement income in that place. So real financial fear, but can be safeguarded against the financial destruction that it could cause over the long term. Then another fear that a lot of people have financially is not having enough for retirement. And this fear gets more and more real and more tangible as people get older, right? As you get closer to that retirement age, a lot of people realize that they didn't do the things that they were supposed to do to get to where they were supposed to be by the time that they were supposed to be there. And that is tough. That's tough. That's tough to get over. It's tough to not have those years to get back, right? Because we know that there's only two ways really that we can grow our money. We can either have higher rates of return or we can have more time with more contributions, right? So the time aspect really gets eaten away at, and then you have to come up with more contributions if you want to build your money up, and you have to take more risk than maybe you would have had to otherwise in order to build the money up if you wait too long, right? So a lot of people not having enough for retirement, it's a very real deal. It's a very real thing, because just think about this. Just think about even if you built up $1 million, which is it's a great feat, and it's something that we should be pushing towards, that millionaire status. But let's say it's just $1 million. I say just $1 million, but you'll see why here momentarily, right? If it's just $1 million, and let's say that you're used to living on $100,000 a year. Well, that's 10% of $1 million. So that means in order to perpetually, meaning forever, create that $100,000 cash flow every single year, what you have to do is you have to make 10% on your money in retirement. Means you're going to have to take a lot of risk in retirement just to keep the money that you do have, the $1 million that you do have, and live the lifestyle that you currently live. And most people are not in that good of a situation. Most people do not have $1 million in a nest egg. Most people are nowhere close to having $1 million in a nest egg. And given that that is the case, I understand that not having enough for retirement can be scary. And I understand that you may think that you can retire at 55 like your parents did or like your grandparents did, but things have changed. And pension plans aren't around anymore. Social Security is as fragile as it's ever been. And we're in this place where we're having to create this income for ourselves into the future. And in trying to do so, we have to have the nest egg in order to create that income as we move forward. And a lot of people are afraid that they're not going to have the income that they should have. And a lot of people aren't. And so a lot of people are forced into working more years. A lot of people are forced into taking side hustles in retirement to bring in more income. A lot of people are forced into living on less than they did when they were working in retirement because they cannot create as much income. It is unfortunate, but it's a very real fear. It's a very real thing that people are having to put up with. But if you are young enough, listen to me. Start as early as you can saving for retirement. If you don't think that you can, right? Start with small amounts, $50, $100, $150 a month. It will add up, and you can grow it as you move forward. You can grow the contributions that you make as you move forward. But it will allow you to stay out of this place where you are fearful of having enough when you are retired, right? Some people are past the point of no return. Some people are already, pushing up towards retirement, and they can see that the finish line is bleak and that the finish line may be pushed further and further away if they're actually going to reach a finish line, right? But you can reach whatever finish line you want to if you're young enough. If you have time on your side, then you can reach whatever finish line you want to reach, however quickly you want to reach it. But you have to put in the effort now. You have to do the things now to alleviate this fear in the future. And if you're already in this place where you have this fear, let's say you're in your 40s or 50s and you're looking towards retirement and you're fearful that you're not going to have enough, there's only a few things you can do. What you can do is you can be putting more away. You can be, again, there's taking more risk, but that's a little more dangerous than, putting more away. Or you can decide that, hey, I'm going to work more hours in order to have more money to put away. Or I'm going to work when I'm retired, right? It's not going to be a true retirement. I'm going to have some part-time gig, or at least some, easy gig that I can bring in money on the side. And maybe you can alleviate this fear for yourself. But this fear should not keep you from trying. When we see that so many people don't have enough for retirement and so many people are scared of what is waiting on them in retirement, that should not keep you from actually doing something. That should not keep you from saving for retirement. If anything, it should be pushing you towards retirement saving. It should be pushing you toward saving money for your future and putting money away and growing it over the long term. Look, you can do it. You absolutely can do it. Especially if time is on your side, you can do it. But this should not be a fear that you end up having if you start early enough, if you follow the financial action plan, because I put all of these things in here, all the investing for retirement, investing for your future type steps. And in having those there, if you just follow them, you should have what you need when it comes time to retire. But you need to start as early as possible working the plan and getting to those steps. Then the fourth financial fear that I have for you is people are afraid of the debts that they have. And this is extremely real, right? This is a very, very real scenario for many, many people. People are deathly afraid of opening up their student loan website page, right? Or opening up the letter that the student loan people send them in the mail, or opening up the credit card bill, or whatever it may be. People are afraid to do that. They are afraid of their debts. And you know why you're afraid of those debts? Because you know you have to pay them. And you know that is money that is flying out of your pocket on a month-to-month basis. And you do not even want to deal with the stuff that's going on inside those envelopes or on that website, right? But the sad truth is that you do have to take care of those things. You do have to take care of the debts that you have outstanding. I understand that debt is scary, right? If it's so scary, you shouldn't have got into it in the first place. But for many of us, it takes the experience. It takes seeing it firsthand, the damage that debt can cause in your financial life. And once you see that, then you become extremely fearful of the debt that you have. And this is where a lot of people get crippled. This is where a lot of people just are so scared of the debts they have that they do nothing, that they don't want to pay them off. Not that they don't want to pay them off. Obviously, they want them paid off, but they're not willing to put the work in to pay them off because they have lost hope. They've lost the hope that they can actually get these things paid off and move forward in their financial life. It's absolutely not true. You can move forward. You can get your debts paid off. I don't care what your income is. I don't care where you are in your life, right? You can put steps in place to lighten your debt load and hopefully eventually become debt-free. This is a hard thing to do. It's one of the hardest parts of the financial action plan, right? But it is short-term. It is one of the most short-term things that there is in the financial action plan, because that period when you're getting out of debt, yes, it's painful. Yes, it takes sacrifice. Yes, it takes you actually acting and not being paralyzed. But once you get out of debt, you are free. You are free to do these other things. You're free to save for your retirement, right? You're free to have money in savings to where emergencies aren't crippling. You are free to give more and more generously as you move along, right? But it makes sense why debt creates fear, because there is a bondage that debt creates, right? Debt is a constant bondage. We're dragging debt along. It is holding us back. It's our master. Debt is your master until you get debt paid off. I mean, think about the names of some of the credit cards. MasterCard, right? It is going to be a master over you if you actually have a balance that you're not paying off, or if, all these different debt products that are marketed to you in your financial life can turn into some extremely negative things. And we see the ramifications of student loans. We see the ramifications of credit cards. We see the ramifications of car loans or car leases in many, many cases. So we need to make sure that once we are out of debt, that we don't go back, right? And if we're not out of debt, that we work towards that place, because that is where you start feeling that financial freedom. That is where you're able to start pushing towards financial success in a very real way. But I understand being afraid of it. I understand being afraid of what you have, not wanting to address the issue, just pushing it off to the side, making minimum payments and moving on in your life. I understand all of that, right? But it's not going to make anything better. You have to act. You have to do something about the debts that you have, or else you're going to be saddled with them till death do you part, right? People have student loans now that are just, tacked on to them until they're, in retirement. There are people in retirement today that have unpaid student loans. There are people in retirement today that have had credit card bills their entire adult life. And let me just tell you, those are not the ones living the comfortable retirements. The people living the comfortable retirements are the ones who are debt-free, who paid off their student loans or didn't have student loans in the first place. It's those who paid off their credit cards and never held a balance on them ever again, right? It's people who paid for cars in cash. It's people who did all of these things, stayed out of debt, avoided debt like the plague, and they were able to build the financial life that they wanted to build over the long term. And so, debt elicits fear in our lives, the fear of action, the fear of having to deal with it, the fear of something occurring and having to go deeper in debt. But if you follow the financial action plan, you follow what I have for you there, then debt can get out of your life expediently. You can get rid of debt very, very quickly and move forward in your financial life without something like debt holding you back from making that progress. Then the last financial fear that I have for you, and this is a very real fear as well, it is the fear of losing money in investments. And I've worked as an investment advisor. I know that people are scared to death to see their account balances go down. They are scared to death of volatility. They are scared to death of seeing anything in the red, any amount, any day. They want it to just be green to Timbuktu, but that is not the case. It's not how investments work. That's not how investing in the stock market specifically works, right? There are going to be down days. There's going to be bad periods. You're going to see times like the coronavirus pandemic where the market plunges a third in value. But what do we see now? Since the bottom of that market, we're up 60+%. We have to understand that long-term trends in investments are what we should look at. Long-term trends in the stock market is what you should pay attention to, not the short-term fluctuations, right? And many people think that when their account values go down, that they have lost money. You don't lose money until you sell. You don't lose money until you decide, I've had enough, and you cash it all in. Then you've really lost money, right? That's why people get into such trouble when the market does crash, and like it did in 2020 during the coronavirus pandemic, and they sell because, I don't want to take any more losses. But then the market turns around and goes upward, and then guess what? They're late back to the party on the upside. So they lost money, they cashed in, they solidified those losses, and then didn't get the gains on the back end, right? That's the danger. So if you're afraid of losing money in investments, we should all have this risk tolerance, right? We should be afraid of truly losing money, truly not having the money there anymore. But we should not be afraid of fluctuations. We should not be afraid of downturns, especially in assets that have done nothing but go up in value over time. We should not be afraid of it. And it's illogical to think that that is something that holds people back. This holds a lot of people back from investing. This holds a lot of people back from just putting money into an employer-sponsored retirement account, a 401k, 403b, TSP, whatever, that has a generous match, right? They're not taking free money because they are scared to lose money in investments. And you know what a lot of this stems from? A lot of this stems from the fact that people don't know. People lack the knowledge. They're ignorant about investments. And I understand most of us weren't taught about investments in our high schools. We weren't taught about investments in college unless you majored in finance or something business related and you took an investments class, right? Most people don't understand how the stock market works. They don't understand. All they see is the negative that is paraded by the news when something goes bad. They don't see all of the good. They don't see the bull markets. All they see is the bear, and they are afraid of losing money because of that, right? But you have to educate yourself. You have to get more knowledge on your investments. You have to understand. That's why I preach all the time. You have to understand what you're investing in, because if you don't understand what you're investing in, yes, you're going to be fearful. Yes, you're going to have fear that you'll lose what you have. Because if you don't know, then there's something to be fearful of, right? Why are people afraid of the dark? Because you don't know what's in the dark. You can't see it, right? Same thing with your investments. Why are people afraid of investing? Because they don't know what's in their investments. If you actually know what you're investing in, then you're not going to be afraid of the dark, right? You're not going to be afraid of investing in whatever it is. You're not going to be afraid of putting your money into that mutual fund or that ETF or that stock or that bond or whatever it may be, right? But you have to understand what you are investing in, and you have to understand long-term market histories. We've talked about this before, how if the market is going up over the long term, then don't you want to be a part of that? Don't you want to be a part of that cycle, right? Don't you want to be a part of that trend? This fear of losing money in investments is one of the most crippling fears out there, and it's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people don't invest. But what they don't understand is that they don't invest at their own detriment, right? The not investing is far more costly than any losses that you may take in a short-term fluctuation within your investments. Not being invested is far more costly than anything you can do, right? So take the volatility, take the downturns, enjoy them, buy more, right? If you're buying broad market index funds or things that you believe to go up in value over the long term, buy more. Take the downturns as an opportunity, a buying opportunity for yourself. And understand that if you see your accounts go down in value, that's just part of the game. That's part of what's going to occur. But if you don't invest money, if you don't put money away, if you don't plan for your future well, if you don't save up money in investment accounts, in retirement accounts, if you don't compound money for your future, you're not going to have enough. And that fear of not having enough in retirement is going to become real, right? And that fear of not having enough to live on when you're older is going to become real, okay? So this fear of losing money is going to make other fears very real to you if you do not take action, if you don't get over this fear, if you don't get the knowledge that you need to build the investment portfolio that you need to have to grow your money over the long term. It is extremely important, and the earlier you can start, the better. The earlier you can learn, the better, because I want you to understand what you're invested in, and hopefully this fear of losing money subsides as your knowledge base increases. So look, guys, I don't want you to be afraid. I don't want you to be fearful, right? These fears are lies, right? These are not fears that you should have, right? Because we can put things in place between us and these fears. We can do things to alleviate these fears. So that's what we need to do. If you have these fears, you need to be doing the things that will help alleviate these fears. Now, will some of these fears ever completely go away? Probably not, right? If you have them now, they'll probably stick around in some way, shape, or form. But we need to be able to alleviate them enough to where they either don't cripple us, meaning they don't paralyze us from doing the thing that we need to do financially, and we need to alleviate them enough so we can actually act, and that we can actually do the things that we're supposed to do, and so that we can actually build the financial life that we want to build over the long term. So look, I know that some things are scary. I know finance is scary, especially if you've never learned about some of these topics. But as you gain knowledge, you'll gain clarity and you'll lose some of the ambiguity, and hopefully you'll lose some of the fear related to these things as well. Don't let fear hold you back. Really step into these places you need to step into and build the financial life that you've always wanted to, because I know that you can do it. You just have to put the effort forward, and you have to put the fears behind you. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below if you haven't done so already, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcast, then be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to keep you accountable to a financial plan and create a plan that is specific to you and your family's needs, I can do that. Just go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab, and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you, and we can begin pushing towards your long-term financial goals together. So tune in Monday as I talk about stock options and the part that they can play in your investment portfolio over the long term. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.